So before we begin, we just wanted to share a little bit of background information about GAVE, or Golden Age Village for the Elderly. GAVE is a not-for-profit organization that was established in 2013 to address the senior housing and long-term care facility crisis faced by elderly Vietnamese Canadians in the GTA. GAVE was officially registered with the CRA as a charity in 2014. Our mission is to provide affordable housing and support services, including personal care, meals, nursing, and medical assistance. To carry out our mission, we are building a campus of care village to provide culturally sensitive, long-term care to seniors in the community. The campus is located in Brampton and is expected to be completed by 2025. Additionally, we are committed to investing in our youth, such as hosting scholarships and our annual webinars. You can take a look further into GAVE by visiting our website, which we linked in the chat. So moving on, joining us today are our 5 lovely panelists: Fayth, Calvin, Amanda, Kathy, and Sandy. If you haven't already read their bios, we're going to go ahead and share it in the chat. So feel free to read over them to familiarize yourself further with their academic backgrounds. Within the hour, we're going to be covering the ins and out of university, including getting involved, how to manage your mental health, developing effective study strategies, and more. Also keep in mind and hold on to any questions you may have for our Q&A at the end. Without further ado, we can go ahead and jump right into our first question. So our first question is, what study strategies did you find effective or not effective, and why? Some subpoints that this question may cover include how to make the most of your lectures, the best note-taking strategies or habits, so this includes any digital programs that you can use, as well as studying in groups versus studying individually. So to start us off for today, Fayth, would you like to start us off?
Yes, for sure. So one of my main tips, I think, is very basic in that it's just going to lectures. I think that's the main thing that people skip out on. You know, they sleep in or they think I'll just catch up another time, especially because of COVID now. Everything's recorded for the most part. So they think I'll just watch the online recording later. But the thing is, we don't always do it later. We do it right before the exam or test. And so the main thing I would say is try not to cram at all. Break everything that you have to do up into small manageable chunks. So if you get assigned 2 homework questions in math, do them that day right after your lecture. Don't save it for the end, right before the midterm or the exam. Do your readings before you get to class. And then you will never feel overwhelmed, like you have an insane amount of work to do, and it's better for your mental health as well. I would also say, you know, you're frequently given exams throughout the semester. The minute you get the assignment, even if you still have 3 weeks until it's due, take a look at it and start brainstorming ideas. Do like a little bit of research every single day. So the night before the assignment's due, you're not pulling an all-nighter. So I think that would be my main tip, is to just break everything up and never cram.
For sure, setting a schedule for yourself is so important. Even if you have like an 8 a.m. lecture, make sure you go to it. So moving on, Calvin, did you want to share as well?
Yeah, so I think just going kind of bouncing off of what Fayth is saying in terms of like keeping a good schedule and maintaining and starting early in a timely manner. I think figuring out what your study strategy is early on and what works best for you is pretty important. Like you don't want to be in your 3rd year before you figure out like that you thrive in a specific environment. So I would say early on when you first start school and you're trying to figure out how you want to study, you know, you want to be able to test out different environments that you like to work in. So whether it's studying alone or with different groups. So for me personally, what I like to do was study with a group that I can bounce ideas off of and take small breaks so that I don't feel burnt out for like hours of studying. But I know a lot of other people who can't deal with that distraction and they prefer to study alone and they don't talk to any of their friends during that time. So I would just say try to figure that out as early as possible by exploring those different options.
Yeah, of course. So everything works different for each person. So try to, you know, try a lot of things out before you figure out which works best for you. Moving on, Sandy, did you want to say anything?
So, I mean, like Calvin and Fayth. I agree with everything that, like most of the things that they have mentioned, I had tried to implement myself as well. Another thing that I started learning a little bit too late was accessing faculty that was available to help me. So a lot of profs will give you office hours where you're able to go ask questions. And I never utilized that nearly enough when I was in school. So just making sure that if you have any questions, to jot them down on the side or to keep them in mind, and then visiting the prof with your TAs during office hours where you can have kind of more specific learning where you can ask specific questions and they'll address you one-on-one. I found that that really helped me, like kind of later on in third and fourth year, especially when material and classes got a lot more specific.
Yes, thanks for sharing that. Office hours are so helpful, actually. Don't be shy or afraid to attend them, because usually the profs or the TAs are so helpful and they're so understanding of anything that you might have. Did anyone else want to add on? Oh, Kathy, your hand's raised. Did you want to mention anything else?
Yeah, definitely. I just want to reiterate how important it is to use all of the resources like Sandy was saying. So, your TA's office hours, your professor's office hours, even emailing them if you need any clarification in any way. And of course, reiterating how important it is to attend all of your lectures. And if you absolutely can't attend all of your lectures, I know sometimes people, in my experience at least, I would ask someone for their notes if I couldn't attend, but we may not have the same note-taking style, and some of the things that they take down, it just doesn't resonate with me. There's a lot of anecdotes that are missed. You missed a lot of nuance and context when it comes to what the professor says and what you actually take down. So really being there and taking your own notes is really important. In terms of note-taking strategies, I really like, and I still use it today, Microsoft OneNote 2016, and specifically the 2016 version, just because the Microsoft 365 version is limited in terms of the features that you have. It's super customizable, and you're able to add certain pins or things that you can easily find in any of the notes that you have. So important dates. I'm in political studies and history, so important dates, important legislation, key figures, and you can highlight that and find it easily in your notes. So that's one way I was able to leverage a specific program in my notes.
Totally. I mean, everyone has different note-taking strategies. So for example, my notes may be legible to someone else because I write very point form notes. So they may be helpful to me, but to another person, like they may make no sense at all. And there are so many note-taking platforms out there, like OneNote or like the Microsoft, like Kathy just mentioned. So you can try out as many as you'd like, and then just stick with the one that best works for you. So if that's all we have for the first question, I can go ahead and move on to the second question. Our second question is, how did you choose what to get involved in? So this includes volunteering, clubs, and etc. To start us off again, Fayth, did you want to share?
Yes, so it's definitely important to get involved, like period, definitely find a community or a few communities at your university. It's a great opportunity to make friends and to meet people. But I would say a lot of people can get overwhelmed and maybe sign up for too much. I say the biggest one is just do what you're passionate about. And I heard people tell me this too, but in first year, I didn't really know what I was passionate about. So I would suggest maybe trying a few different things. And then after the end of first year, you'll know. So I had no idea. I joined a club in first year, and then I was part of creating a mentorship program for that club. And I realized that my passion is mentorship. So ever since then, I've been doing, a lot of work that relates to that. And so that's how I suggest going about it. Definitely do something that you're passionate about, though.
Yeah, of course. I mean, you don't want to be stuck in a club that you don't dislike, but at the same time, you want to take all the opportunities available to you. So don't be afraid to try something out, even if it's new. Moving on, Calvin, did you want to add on?
Yeah, so I was in a accounting and financial management program, so it's like very business heavy, and co-op was like a huge thing here, and it gets very competitive trying to compete with your peers for like a co-op job. So a lot of these extracurriculars and clubs and teams or whatever you're joining is um, it does a lot for your resume in terms of boosting like how the recruiters will look at you. So from that perspective, there was a big emphasis to look at joining different clubs that are very relevant to your field. So there was like an accounting team, like not team, but club or whatever, and then other business types of clubs and stuff. And a lot of people choose to join those because it'll boost their resume. So while I say that that's important, I think that you should also focus on like a good balance to do things that actually interest you as well, even if it has nothing to do with boosting your resume, because really all these things can be positives that can be added. So if it's sports you like, or any other types of clubs that don't necessarily have to attribute to your field, then I would say just try to explore that stuff. But keep in mind that there is a lot of benefit to doing some of the things that are like more relevant to your field as well. And then the last thing I'd say is most universities, when you first join, like in the first week or so, there's a big like club fair day. Take the time to go and look around and just see what interests you and just talk to people. And it's a good way to make friends and meet people and find a nice community.
Yeah, for sure. Also, if you are joining a club or anything like that that is relevant to your field, it may be easier to connect with other people who are also in your field, and that'll help you build connections that will help you in the future. Moving on, Amanda, did you want to say anything?
I mean, they kind of already said what I would have said, but I will say, like, yeah, finding a balance between doing something that's going to pad your resume and doing something that you love is definitely so important. For me, when it came to clubs at school, I chose to focus solely on things that I love and I'm passionate about that have nothing to do with my resume. And it was actually a surprise for me when I found out, because I'm trying to apply to medical school. It was a surprise that those clubs are actually an asset, because when you do something that's outside of your program, it shows that you're a well-rounded individual and you have more interest than just what's in your books. And grad schools, med schools, professional schools, they love to see that you're more than just someone who does their homework on time. And also, it's great for your mental health to have these extracurriculars that have nothing to do with your program, because you can burn out so quickly if you're doing everything just to pad your resume, just to do well in school. You have to remember, sometimes it's important to just do things that you love, and that's what university is for as well.
Yeah, of course, it's so important to keep an open mind out there in university, especially since there's so much going on, but there's so many opportunities available to everyone at university. You just have to go ahead and reach out to them. So moving on, Kathy, did you want to add on?
Yeah, I was just going to add to, with regards to if you're choosing between clubs and organizations that are relevant to your field of study versus something that you're passionate in, mix it up, do a little bit of both, see what sticks. I think it's important to do, again, I'm the same way as Amanda, to join organizations that you're passionate about, just because the more into it you are, the more likely you are to have a bigger stake in that organization. So you may end up being the chair of that organization, and that speaks a lot more on a resume than it would as just a member of a certain organization. So, I know for myself, I was really passionate about teaching university students about sexual health and consent. And so I volunteered for the Sexual Health Resource Center, which I was really passionate about. And I ended up doing all of their teach-ins at the residence dorms. And in my final term, I got like volunteer recognition, and I was, part of the chair of the organization. So that definitely helped boost my resume, and it wasn't necessarily super relevant to my degree or anything like that. But just the fact that I had, I guess, more of a leadership or senior position within the organization definitely boosts your resume as well. So you can have both.
Yeah, definitely. So once you do join any clubs, if they host any elections to elect like official positions in the club, feel free to go ahead and do that. Even if you're just like first year going second year. I mean, I did, and I got it surprisingly, but it's a learning experience, and it also helps so much for leadership learning as well. And lastly, Sandy, did you want to join in?
I think everyone mentioned everything that I would have said, so I'll just leave that question at that.
Yeah, of course, no worries. So moving on to our third question. How did you manage your time and maintain a school work-life balance? So this question encompasses organizational tips as well as finance, so working during school or during the summer. To start us off, Amanda, would you like to?
Sure. In terms of how I managed my time and work-life balance, a skill that I had to develop was called time blocking. And it's essentially when you schedule your non-negotiables, as you would say. So that's like work or classes, lectures, things that you can't reschedule. And when you do that, and then you work everything else that's more flexible around that, you're not stuck with being overscheduled. You're not trying to multitask and do everything at once. You have time that's allotted for each thing so that you can get it done efficiently and effectively, and still have time for your extracurriculars, still have time to hang out with friends and family, still have time for your own self-care, etc. So it's really, really important that you stay organized with your schedule, and basically like just don't negotiate with yourself. If you know that you have a lecture, don't talk yourself out of going to lecture. Go to lecture. You know, don't say I'll do it later. Do it now. There's no later. There's just now. And when you do that and you have that mindset and that discipline, it'll help you so much in the work field and in school, because you'll be on top of everything that you need to be on top of. And in terms of finance and like working during school or summer, for me, what worked was essentially just finding a job that is either related to my field. So it's kind of like you're learning a little bit on the job as well, or just finding a job that is flexible and understanding of students and their schedule, because school has to be the priority, not your part-time job.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said. And also so many people will tell you that you should be, you know, working at your optimal level, like just working all day, every day, studying all day, every day, but give yourself some breaks too, because you're going to need them in university. So set aside some time for yourself. Calvin, did you want to add on?
Yeah, I guess there's not much more to add on, but I would just say that like starting off early so you can prioritize your, because I guess for me personally, the thing that impacted work-life balance the most was cramming on studying. So if you can start your studying schedule early, and that, like as Amanda mentioned, leaves a time for you to work on prioritizing, you know, what else is important to you. So figuring out how to balance that with like spending time with friends or extracurriculars or sports or whatever other activities or hobbies you like, that will help, I guess, like decrease or manage some of that stress. So I guess like, yeah, just to kind of bring it back to like the whole study schedule thing. If you're going to lectures and stuff, try to go over your notes shortly after your lectures. Don't leave it all for 3 or 4 weeks later when you don't remember, and then you're cramming and now you're stressed out and you don't have time for your other stuff that would, you know, attribute to like a healthy work-life balance.
I know for sure. The worst feeling is when your friends ask if you want to hang out or anything, but you can't because you're cramming for a test that you've known was coming for an entire month, but you're just cramming the night before. Did any of our other panelists want to join in or add anything?
I can add some stuff to this question. So similar to the time blocking, I just, the planners or the agendas that you get from elementary school, I straight up just took that and brought it with me to university. that never left. I used it in high school. I used it in university as well, just to organize. So just my experience personally with school organization and finance, especially with work-life balance. I had a job while I was in university, as well as during the summer, I would like hustle and try to get as many jobs as possible just to make sure that I wasn't as stressed out during school. And the one big thing that helped obviously was scheduling and making sure that I was organized and I was able to remember and go to all my commitments like work, lectures, any meetings that I had, any group meetings I had. So the planning aspect is super important for that. But just speaking about financials in schools, these are things that I didn't know when I was going to university. There are a lot of grants and bursaries that you can apply for that I was unaware of. So even things like being a first generation student, there are sometimes bursaries and grants that you can apply for, which will help with that. And I remember working so hard during high school to make sure that my grades and my grade point average was high enough so that I could get certain scholarships. And that mentality continues with you when you go into university, because in order to keep your grants or the money that the school has offered to pay a portion for, you have to maintain your grades. So that was something that I was unaware of. I thought that, you know, I worked hard for this and now that I have it, it's there for life kind of thing. But you need to keep up your grade point average once you enter university as well. And that's something that I was unaware of. So when my grades started to slip and I was talking to my academic advisors, that was something that I was notified of. And so that kind of gave me like a wake up call really early, because I'm trying to make my life easier at school, and finances is a super important part of that, because I also access the OSAP student funding program as well, which is something that I also learned about when I was entering university, which is a resource that I utilize throughout university. So that's something that if students are looking to get some help with finances and paying for university, that might be a good option to look into for when you do start applying and accepting schools.
Yeah, thanks for adding that. I mean, my worst mistake from joining or entering university was that I didn't look into many scholarships or bursaries or anything like that. So my biggest advice would be like start researching them now, and like you can make yourself a list, and there are so many out there, especially available to first year students. So it'll help a lot. Okay, so Amanda, you had your hand raised, but did you want to say anything?
Yeah, like just like a quick thing, when you're organizing your study schedule, try not to cram the night before, because there are many studies that show that actually does not help you, and you're more likely to blank out on your test the next day. You're more likely to forget the things that you learned the night before. So for me, what I always said right before my exam is, if I don't know it by now, I'm not going to know it for the test. So don't stress yourself out the night before, because anything that you did know, you're probably going to forget if you're cramming the night before.
Yeah, of course, and sleep is so important. So make sure you're getting enough sleep, because the last thing you want to have happen is falling asleep during your test, which, believe me, sometimes it does happen, and it's very tempting to, especially when you're writing like a 2-hour exam. In the middle, it's going to get tiring, but you just got to power through it. So if no one else has anything to add on, we can move on to our next question. Our next question is, how did you take care of your well-being? So this includes sports, hobbies, etc. And this question also umbrellas how to manage stress and anxiety, how to deal with and pull yourself out of a rough patch, and where and who to seek out for assistance when with your mental health. To start us off, Sandy, did you want to start us off?
Sure. So while I was in university, obviously it's a very stressful environment. I realized a little bit later as well that there are resources on campus that are offered by school to address your mental health. So like clubs, counselors, even, people that you can talk to. There are organizations, clubs meant for that. I personally joined a club called jack.org, which is about mental health awareness. And so I learned a lot of kind of stress management techniques, like anxiety management techniques through this organization, because, speakers would come in and we would be able to attend seminars that would be able to speak on that topic. And I found that helped a lot. Also, I mean, it was a club that I was able to socialize in as well. So having people to talk to about, issues or things that were weighing heavy on my mind, it was nice to have like-minded people and know that people were experiencing similar things to me, which made me feel like less alone. And I guess that helped overall as well. In terms of like hobbies and sports and stuff, school has so many different options for you to take. So there's like running clubs, if that's something that you're into, which I found that I really liked when I was in university. Even recreational sports teams, so like volleyball, basketball, flag football, dodgeball, all those things are available. And you can just like sign up and join other classmates. So through that, I was able to meet different people from different programs, not necessarily just my personal program. I met people in business. I met people in like math, science, like language studies. So it's really cool to have that opportunity, because when I go to classes, I'm just seeing other people in sciences primarily. I rarely get to meet people outside of my program or even my field of study. So that was really nice. And that also helped because I found that sometimes maybe I didn't have as much in common with some of my classmates who were in my program. And I found that a lot of my friends that I ended up making throughout university ended up just being outside of my program. And if I hadn't joined that, let's say, recreational volleyball team, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to meet them. And I wouldn't have the friends that I have now today.
Of course, especially with sports in universities, sometimes it can be really heavy. So you have to consider that when you're trying out to teams. Like, would you be able to wake up to go to a 6 a.m. practice on the soccer field that you have to get to? And additionally, if you don't make it to a team, or if you don't necessarily want that burden of being on like the school team, that there are also so many intramurals that you can sign up for. So there's that to keep in mind as well. And they're great to make friends, like Sandy said, with people outside of your program. Adding on, Fayth, did you kind of throw in?
Yeah, for sure. I think the main thing is also, your mindset as well going into university, because I think a lot of the first years I've worked with, stress and anxiety hits around midterms and exams, and especially right after. And we have to realize that failure is inevitable and it hits everyone at different times. For most people, I can speak for myself, during my first midterms of university, it was a very stressful time, and I didn't do as well as I'd hoped on most of them. I remember, doing my physics midterm and thinking I have to reevaluate my whole career right now because, it's not going to be good. And I think most university students feel that way too, but one midterm does not determine your grade in the course. So even if you do bad on an assignment or a midterm, even if you do not as well as you'd hope to on an exam, it's okay. And even one course doing not as well as you'd hoped, it doesn't bring down your entire GPA, and it's not the end of the world. And I think when we're in that moment, we think it's the end of the world. And we think we're not going to get into the post-grad program that we want, or just a bunch of other things that go into our minds, but we just have to be very forgiving of ourselves. And, you do the best you can. And then whatever happens after that, you just move forward. So definitely try to have that mindset. It's easier said than done for sure, but try to remember that, especially during those stressful times, that everything will be okay and it'll work out in the end.
For sure. I know everyone says that the 4 years is going to go by super quickly, But 4 years, you can get a lot done in 4 years. So don't stress over like one quiz or one test. Like you can always make up for it in the future. Lastly, Amanda, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, like Faith said, I was one of those students who was struggling in first year. I I had anxiety attacks like every single day, 3 panic attacks a day. It was like the stress was getting to me so much so to the point that it was debilitating and it was affecting my grades. And it was the first time where I went from being an A student in high school to suddenly pulling D's on my exams and getting a warning for academic probation. And when that happened, I just realized I need to do something about this now and I need to ask for help. And that's something that a lot of students don't realize is like it's okay to not be okay and it's okay to ask for help. For me personally, I didn't go to the school guidance counselors or therapists or whatever that they had to offer because the lineup was so long. But I did find an online resource called BetterHelp, and they provide a very, very affordable service for students because they give you a student discount. And they basically ask you to start off, you know, what do you need help in? And then they pair you up with a therapist or psychologist that specializes specifically in that field and talks you through it. And for me, having that resource as well as getting a better support system, pulling myself out of a toxic environment, toxic cycles, that was what really turned my whole university experience around. And that's how I finished with a 3.8 when I had a 2.6 in first year.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Amanda. So everyone does, or I'm sure you've been warned that the transition from high school to university is going to be rough. And if you do experience that, like don't put yourself down, don't pressure yourself. And there's like a few online platforms where students like speak and like Discord or Reddit and whatnot, and they'll speak about like how they're doing in courses, and they'll say stuff like, you know, this is a bird course or this is an easy 12 course. Don't listen to them. Everyone's going at their own pace, and sometimes like they could be lying. So don't like pressure yourself and compare yourself to other students, because that's not going to get you anywhere, and it's not great for your mental health. And yeah, like it's so important to like take breaks, like I said before. If it's just going on like a mental health walk or a mental health hike. I mean, I went to McMaster University I go to McMaster University, and there are so many trails on the campus. So go ahead and like explore them one day. It's great just to get some fresh air and take your mind off of things once in a while. So does anyone else want to add on to that question? If not, then we can go ahead and move on. So our very last question is, what is something you would do differently if you had to redo university? To start us off, Kathy, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, this one's a little bit tricky, and I was thinking about it just because hindsight is 2020, right? So it's hard for me to say, you know, if I was younger, what would I do differently? I would do a lot of things differently. But I kind of wish I just knew that I had a lot more options than I thought I had. Um, I guess I wasn't really put into a position where I got to make a lot of my own decisions. I kind of just followed the path that, you know, I've seen other people follow, or, you know, my parents told me, oh, this cousin said so and so did this and XYZ. And I was like, okay, sounds like that's something that you're supposed to do. I didn't really reach out for myself to really figure out what all of my options were. So I went down, you know, the path of university. Now I know, you know, I could have explored different universities with that focus on, you know, co-op options, or even college programs that have co-op options that are invaluable when you enter the job market. So things like that, I wish I had in consideration, even joining panel discussions like this, you know, having these different resources and kind of seeking out those resources. So I really applaud you guys for coming out and coming to this panel to kind of get more information about what it is that you're stepping into. I didn't do that for myself, so I wish I did that differently. Perhaps I'd be on a different journey, but like I said, hindsight's 2020, and I'm still happy with where I ended up. And I think I would have been successful regardless because I was able to pull through and manage my priorities accordingly. It took some struggling and a little bit of roadblocks to get there, but yeah, I guess that's all I have.
Thanks for that, Kathy. I think we're going to have each of our panelists answer this question, actually. Did you want to go next?
Me? Sure, yeah. So I think that like everything Kathy said, I would probably echo as well. The main thing at point I would probably want to emphasize is that it's not a race. So, you know, take your time throughout university. And I know a lot of people who hesitate to make a change in their direction because they feel like they've already been put on a certain path. And, you know, they think, I have to start over. I've already put in a year or 2 years on into this major or into this field. But honestly, it's not a race. It's going to be a long journey. And if you think about it, you're kind of starting on a journey for not the rest of your career, but like probably a good chunk of it. And you probably want to course correct early on if you can. So take the time to learn a lot of different things, even about the current field you're in, because there's always going to be a lot of options in whatever small area you're studying. But yeah, take the time to explore what other options there are and what things interest you. And don't hesitate to kind of, you know, maybe make a change because you think it's too late, because it's not too late. And there's no need to compare your timeline with your peers or with anybody else's, really. It's just, you're going to be going on your own pace.
Of course, thanks for that. Sandy, did you have any advice you would give to your younger self?
I mean, I agree with everything Calvin and Kathy have said. One thing that I might have done differently myself is take some time in between entering university. So I definitely felt the pressure of kind of graduating high school and then entering university immediately, choosing my program immediately, and then kind of just like getting thrown into a completely new environment. And although I made it through and I survived and, you know, like I did well, it was a very big struggle. And so I feel like maybe if I had a year in between that, I would have mentally prepared myself a little bit better for university. But even while I was in university, I put a lot of pressure on myself to make sure that I was keeping a full course load and, you know, finishing within the 4 years, or even trying to finish as fast as possible, because I always have the idea of, you know, like financials looming over my head. So if I were to do everything that I did, but only alter one thing, I might choose to take my courses a little bit more spread out. So, you know, some semesters I don't need to take like a full course load, maybe like to have a part-time course load, or take some courses over the summer to kind of like lessen the burden during the regular school year or the regular school term. Because I feel like a lot that although I was able to make it through school and do a full course load, I think I sacrificed my mental health a little bit because I was constantly stressed out about school and work and studying. And I kind of felt a lot of guilt about if I wasn't studying, if I wasn't being productive while I was in university, I wasn't doing enough. And so I feel like I was really hard on myself. And if I were to go back and do something different, I think that would be it. Like just be a little bit easier on myself, like take a little bit of the pressure off. I mean, you can make mistakes and you can correct it. It's not like, you know, if you do poorly on a class, you can't come back from that. Like that's not the case. I feel like, and that's so important to know, because in the moment it seems like that like my life is over. Like sometimes I feel a test, like everyone said before, I feel a test, I feel a course, something like that, and it sets me back. I feel like my life is over. And although it's a little bit dramatic at the time, like school was all I knew and school was all I cared about. And so because I put all that pressure on myself, everything that I did and every little mistake that I made just manifested into something so much bigger in my mind. And I just feel like that pressure, that self-imposed pressure was so not necessary at all, because although university is serious, although it is like a big step in your life, it's not the end of your life. It's only like one little snippet of your career, the rest of your life. You might continue schooling in the future. So it's like such a short amount of time to put so much pressure on yourself, I think. And so that's what I would do differently, I think.
Yeah, thanks, Sandy. That was very well said. Fayth, did you want to say anything next?
Yes, that was well said. I'll say definitely the same as you guys, but also ask for help when you need it. There are always people that want to help you, and take advantage of upper years who are in your programs. Ask them for help about course selection. Take advantage of your TAs and your profs too. They're there to help you. And speaking of profs, try to build connections with them, because that's something that I didn't think about at all. And it was only until recently where I have to start thinking about letters of reference and things like that. And I'm like, well, I don't have any connections with profs, and so I've been trying to make an effort to do that. And just even by going to office hours, it's made me more engaged with the content. And profs have some amazing opportunities, if they get to know you, that they can offer. So I would say that, and yeah, just ask for help and don't be afraid to try different things and try things that maybe even you feel like you're underqualified for. A lot of the positions or even the scholarships, I thought there's no way I'm going to get it, but it's always worth a try, and you lose nothing by trying. So definitely put yourself out there and don't be afraid to try things.
Thanks for that, Fayth. Amanda, did you add on yet or no? Or you did?
I did not, but I guess I can weigh in now. Advice I'd give to my younger self is don't go to school just because you fell in love with the campus and what it looks like, because that's what I did. I went to Queens because I fell in love with how the campus looked. I thought, I want to be a part of this community. This is great. And then I got there and it wasn't for me. So definitely when you're picking your schools, don't just look at the school itself, look at the community around it, look at the city you're going to be living in, and look at, the local things that are going to be offered to you, what there is and what there isn't, because that all affects your mental health when it comes to school, because this is the area you're going to be living in for 8 months of the year. So if you hate the area, you're not going to be happy and you're not going to feel motivated to do well in school. And that was what happened with me. Kingston lacked the diversity that I felt I needed to feel included and to feel supported by my community. So that's definitely something I would say to myself is, don't just go because of the architecture being pretty. And also I would say, like Kathy said, like, don't just do what you think you have to do. Look into all the programs, do your research. I didn't do that. And that's why I ended up having to switch programs, which also is not a bad thing if you feel that you need to switch. But yeah, if I were to go back and change something, I would have chosen a program that resonated with me more rather than just picking a program that I thought was going to fast track me to grad school. Because grad schools, they don't care what you majored in most of the time. A lot of the time, they just care that you're a well-rounded individual, you did well in whatever program that you're in, and if you pass whatever examinations that they give you, you're most likely going to get in. You don't have to be in life sciences, for example, to get into med school. You don't have to be in political science to get into law school, etc. So, do your research for sure.
Very well said, Amanda. I don't think I missed anyone, right? But I guess I can add on, although I'm only second year, and advice that I would give to myself would be outgoing. I mean, I'm a huge introvert, but in university, like, there's so many people surrounding you. So it's so important to network and make friends, especially if you're living on campus during welcome week. Like, a lot of people do this, but go around your floor and just like knock on every door just to introduce yourself. And like, those are the people that you're going to be seeing throughout the entire year. So it's so important to make friends with your neighbors or people in your building. And welcome week is so fun. Go ahead and like do all the activities, and stay safe during Welcome Week as well, if you do attend. So that was the last of our questions. So we're going to go ahead and open up our Q&A now. So if you have any questions, you can go ahead and type them, directly message them to Michelle if you'd like to be anonymous, or you can just type them right into the public chat if you'd like. Michelle Pham is our tech support for today. While we're waiting for questions to come in, we can start off with one of the questions that we had already. So what tips do you have specifically for your university? So this could be like any secret study spots that you have, or, you know, CAF food to try and CAF food not to try. Did anyone want to start us off with that?
I can start off. So I went to Waterloo, and I think study tips is try to avoid the libraries. They're really, really sad. They're really old, and like it's just dark and damp. And for me personally, I didn't find it to be a good study environment. It can be quiet, but it's like we have a lot of really beautiful engineering buildings. They put all their money into like engineering and comp sci and stuff like that. So those areas always have like really nice rooms, like lecture halls or wherever you can kind of just go find an empty one. Just take your time to explore all the little corners of the campus. It's pretty big. A lot of the buildings are new. You'll find something that's going to be like your go-to study spot for a while, and you know it's just a little better than going to and fighting for a seat at the library, which sucks.
Sandy, did you want to add next?
Me? Oh,
okay.
I don't know.
Right.
Your voice cut off. I couldn't hear which
Oh.
which name you said.
It's okay.
Okay, I'll be quick. If you're going to Queens, I would recommend trying out Matt Corey, because there's like tunnels that can help you get in and out in the winter, so it's a lot warmer to get to. And also there's a bunch of food that is better than the CAF food there, so you can study and get food, and it's 2 seconds away, and it's very convenient. And a lot of people don't really study at Matt Corey, so you're usually going to be able to find yourself a seat. And the other thing I would say is if you're going to York, don't go to the library. Same thing as Waterloo. They're very sad. Go to the new student building. It's beautiful. It's brand new. It's got outdoor seating. It's got indoor seating. You can book a study room, and there's also food there. So for me, I don't know if you've noticed, I like to study near the food. But yeah, those are two places that I would say check out if you're going to Queens or York.
Thanks for that. Yeah, no, I'm also like that. Like I'm always snacking while I'm studying. So study snacks are important. Sandy, did you want to go next?
Sure. So I actually went to school in Ottawa. So I found that if I didn't want to be at school, I would just go to like a coffee shop. Like the city is so beautiful, especially in the summer. So it was just nice to go to a coffee shop or like a cute little cafe or something like that. Those are all always nice for me because I like a little bit of like busy noise in the back, so it's not just like dead silent. But if anyone is going to Carleton or thinking about going to Carleton specifically, there is a butterfly observatory that also doubles as a study, like a study station or a study area. There's like 4 or 5 desks set up, so you might have to be a little bit early to get there, but there's always like such good natural lighting, and you can go into the butterfly observatory if you really want. Later on in university, when I started my thesis, I got student access to certain buildings. So like even if I was going to study like at midnight, if I felt like I wanted to study, I had access to certain buildings with my personal student card. So if that's something that you're gonna, a lot of students do end up doing a thesis. So if that's something that you do end up doing or pursuing, that's like a perk that I didn't know about. Like I didn't know I had access into certain buildings with my student card. So look into that, see if that's something that you have access to, because that I would just go to campus at like midnight, study when I wanted to, or if I wanted to go early before lecture, so like 4 or 5 a.m. That's something that I would do as well. Go into like a building that I had access to, so that I wasn't disturbing anyone, and so that I knew I wasn't locked out of campus whenever I went at like in the late hours.
Thanks for that, Sandy. Kathy, did you want to go next?
Yeah, so if you're going to Queen's University, if you need a quiet place to study, like me, I get distracted by like busy background noise. I really have to like zone in and be in the zone, especially if I'm writing essays and I'm researching for hours on end. I need that silence. Then the library is a good place. I think the Queen's Library is probably the only place that doesn't seem super sad. It's actually it does have beautiful architecture. So Amanda is correct in that. Like the architecture is beautiful. There's a lot of beautiful natural light, especially in Stauffer Library. So if you do need a quiet place, that is an option. And they do have a coffee shop downstairs on the main floor if you need a pick-me-up or some snacks, coffee, whatever it is. And then, like she said as well, there's a lot of different halls that you can study in. You can even study in the Commerce Building, which I've done a bunch of times before, even though I'm not in commerce. They have really beautiful facilities there as well. So I've done that as well. In terms of cafeteria food, did not like either cafeteria options in my first year. So if you're picking between meal plans, you'll have options between ones that are heavier on meals, and then they have some flex options. So basically you have a dollar value that you can use on any of the other food places and in the food courts on campus. So like if you are going to Tim's or something, you can use your flex dollars on that. So I would opt for a meal plan that has a lot more flex dollars than actual meals that are only redeemable, you know, in the cafeteria.
Thanks, Kathy, for that piece of advice. Fayth, did you want to add on? Or if not, we can move on to the audience questions. Okay.
Move on, yeah.
Okay. So our first audience question is, I'm going into life science and biochem at Queen's next September in hopes of going into med school. What clubs did you join first year, and was most of it science-based? I think this was directed at Amanda, but if anyone else would like to add on, they can as well.
Thanks for asking the question. I feel so special. I did not join any science-based clubs in first year because my schedule for life sci was so jam-packed. You know, like you're doing full year courses, like 8 a.m. courses, 8 a.m. lectures, and then you've got your labs, and then you've got your tutorials and all of that. So I wanted an extracurricular that was completely out of the science field. So I joined the Vogue charity fashion show, and I was one of their models in first year. And that was so much fun. I got to meet so many people from all different educational backgrounds, and we were all just like there to have a good time and raise money for a dope charity. And it took up about like, I would say like 3 days out of the week, sometimes 4, like an hour or two each, an hour or two every other day or so, because we had rehearsals. But even though it was a lot of hard work and it was a time commitment, it was so much fun because they had like socials that you were invited to after, like there was parties that were related to just people in the program, in the club. And like, yeah, a lot of the people I met there, I'm still friends with to this day. And it was a great opportunity. So I would say if you're doing a heavy science-based program, try the other extracurriculars that are not science-based.
All right, thanks for answering, Amanda. Before we move on, so we have 4 minutes left until we end, but if we have any unanswered questions, we're going to make a document and send it to you guys afterwards with any unanswered questions, and the panelists will go ahead and answer them on that document. So moving on, any tips or advice for a first year who's going to live off campus? Calvin, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, so I live off campus at Waterloo in like, I think it's called Rev. So it's basically like 1 room, 2 roommates, and you each get like left side or right side of the room. So big learning experience is like learning to respect your roommates' boundaries and like and shared spaces. And you're gonna, for a lot of people, it's gonna be your first time living with a roommate that isn't family. And so you're gonna have to learn to be flexible and adjust. But what I would say as like a main tip is, if you're going to school with like to a university with friends from high, they'll be like great roommates. Because when you start to spend a lot of like shared space and time together, you're gonna have to learn how to be compatible in that sense. So and then also look at your different options. So in an environment like the one I stayed at, it was very social, but for some people that's not really what they're looking for, and they want a little bit more quiet time. So there's other living spaces at Waterloo that kind of like a little bit more private. So like it'll be more apartment based, and you'll have your own room, own washroom and stuff. So just try to figure out what works best for you and your comfort zone, I guess. Also get a mini fridge if like that helps. Honestly, if you don't have like a fridge in your place, like that helps a ton. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Calvin. So our next question is, how do you usually take your notes in class? So do you use a laptop, tablet, pen, or paper? Did anyone else want to answer this question? Amanda, you want to go first?
Sure. I started off in first year just typing on my laptop, but then I found that in second and third year and fourth year, switching to a tablet was so much easier because it was just easier on my back because you're carrying books and your laptop. That hurts after a while. So I switched to getting like an iPad, and I used an app on there to just handwrite my notes digitally. And I found that helped me a lot more because especially when you're in like math class and stuff like that, it's so annoying to try to type in equations. So being able to write it on your tablet and then switch to typing right away if you need to, it's very effective, it's very efficient.
Great, thanks. Kathy, your hand was raised as well. Did you want to add on?
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely an individualized thing. So whatever works best for you, it's something that you can experiment with. Obviously, Amanda did, which is great. I find that math and science-based programs, everyone usually writes notes just because there are those formulas, and it's just a lot easier that way. And there's going to be problems on the board that you're going to have to like jot some stuff down. For myself in political studies and history, I typed everything just because I'm able to type really fast, and I'm able to capture a lot of those random anecdotes that sometimes professors would go on, and you're like, is this relevant? Don't know. You're like listening, and then by the end of it, you realize, perhaps he gets to his point, or he or she gets to their point, and you realize it wasn't relevant, and you're trying to keep up writing all this stuff. And so for me, it was just easier to type, and then I would be able to summarize my notes after and determine what was relevant, what was not. It's a little bit difficult in the liberal arts just because their lectures are a little bit more free flowing, and there are a lot of personal anecdotes and stories. So it was just easier for me to type everything down, and then I'll sort it out after.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Kathy. So it is 12 o'clock. If anyone needed to drop off, you can go ahead and do that. We've got 2 questions left. I don't know if the panelists, did you guys want to go ahead and just go through those last 2, or we can save it for the document?
I don't need to leave right away, so we can go through the last 2.
Calvin, did you?
Yeah, I got to drop. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Cool.
Thanks for
everybody.
joining us, Calvin. Okay, so we've got 4 panelists left that can help answer these questions. One of them is, what's a good way to meet people and make friends in university? Oh, Fayth, sorry, did you want to answer that?
Yeah, I can start it off. I would say, I think Caitlin mentioned before, but if you're living on res, definitely take the opportunity to get to know the people that are living around, because it will definitely make a huge difference. I'd say just because you're living with these people day in and day out, and you can really have so much fun with them. Me and Caitlin were actually on the same floor this past year, and our floor was very crazy, lots of good memories from there. And you have a support system and like another family kind of too within your floor. So definitely get to know them. And then yes, join clubs and other things too, because you can find other communities as well.
Thanks for that, Fayth. Did anyone else want to add on? If not, we can move on.
I can say like a quick thing. I met a lot of my good friends actually in lecture. don't be afraid to sit beside people. Don't be afraid to ask the person next to you, hey, did you get that on the last slide? Because that's how I made some of my best friends. So, and it helped you because a lot of times they will share their notes with you.
Of course, thanks for that, Amanda. So our very last question is, thoughts on buying textbooks for STEM courses? So is it better to buy used ones? Amanda.
Yes, buy the used ones. I bought brand new textbooks in first year and it was the biggest waste of money ever. Buy them used from other students. Just make sure that it's the correct edition so that you can, keep along in class. And then also, I think sometimes if you're lucky, you can find your textbook online in a PDF version for free.
For sure, that's what I did too. All my textbooks were online. Okay, Sandy, your hand was raised too. Did you want to add on?
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same thing as Amanda. When I, for most of my courses, actually, one person out of my friend group would buy the PDF, if anything, and then we'd all just split the cost. So it'd end up being like maybe $10 each, because sometimes textbooks can run you like $100, $200 sometimes. And when I went to even like a used bookstore, sometimes they can be like upwards of $100. And I did not have the money to pay for books. So splitting PDFs and stuff like that was great because we all had access to the same one and it was online. So I didn't have to carry them to class or like have a big stack of books in my room, just sitting there, and I would just be able to access it anywhere, bring it anywhere. And it was just so much easier.
Thanks, Sandy. Fayth, did you want to add on as well?
Yeah, I'll just add on quickly. I think it definitely depends on the university and the course too, because I know at McMaster first year, for a lot of the science courses, you don't even need a textbook. So I would say definitely before you even purchase, go into the first week of classes and your prof will usually say, and they'll either say it's optional, and if it's optional, then chances are the content on the textbook won't be on the exam, or it'll be recommended, or it'll be mandatory. Mandatory, of course, go ahead and buy, and directly ask your prof too during that first introductory lecture. Ask them, will testable material come from the textbook? And for a lot of my profs in first year, they said no. And so I saved a lot of money once I realized that. But first year, I was definitely like, oh, I want to be safe. I bought so much, wasted so much money in some of my courses. I didn't even end up touching the textbook. So definitely wait to purchase until you know exactly what your prof wants.
For sure. Thanks for that, Fayth. So that was our last Q&A question. Thanks for joining, everyone, and thanks to our lovely panelists. You guys were great. I hope everyone found this webinar helpful, and good luck with university and everything in the future. All right. Bye, everyone.